And we're back, and it's COMP305, and it's the winter 2016 semester, and it's week 5, lesson 5, part 3 of our broadcast, and we're talking about platformers, right? It's all about platformers. So let's bring up that project we're working on now. I'm just going to bring up Unity, and if you join me on Unity as well, that'd be great. We just did a little test. Some people found it a little harder than they would like. Please don't despair. I said it earlier, if you didn't do well on your tests, no, I'm not going to upgrade, right? If you didn't do well on your test, it's okay, because there's always opportunities for bonus marks and assignments, and even on the exam. On the exam, just like I mentioned earlier, whoever finishes first, I'm going to give 5% bonus to, right? So if you're really good, it's going to be like a game jam. First person who finishes, 5% bonus. They get the prize. I might even give a prize to second and third people to finish, right? So see how it goes, to give you a little bit of competition, right? So again, you can't work with other people on this or whatever. I usually do that with my game stuff, and you're in a game course, so we'll gamify it. Last day when we left off, we were doing this little game, and I talked about making this pixel perfect and some of the problems with that. Notice when I made this platform, right, here it is, it kind of bounces. We got this item that bounces down here, right? And, you know, so you've got an item here that's a rigid body 2D, right? That means that it has a weight. It has a each rigid body 2D. When you have a rigid body 2D attached to it, so if I click on the crate item, right? Again, I'm looking at last day's example. I'm looking at COMP305 Winter 2016 platformer demo, which is on GitHub. If you want to download that and be with me, that's cool. I'm using, you know, the for the platform. I made a tile map, right? That I just kind of put together in Fireworks. And I kind of put together a few tiles, which is kind of cheesy, but I wanted to show you how I did it with just a custom tile map, and we're going to see if we can modify this and make it a little nicer, right, with some tiles we have in our platform, our project, right? Notice how when we had our platform tile, this is our platform tile, here it is. Here's our tile map, and notice how our tile map has a bunch of tiles we've cut, right? This is one way of doing it, but I highly encourage you guys to use tile maps that come from Texture Packer. And we'll talk about Texture Packer in a second. In order for you to use Texture Packer, which is a separate program, and I've mentioned that before in a previous video, and here's Texture Packer. Let me show it to you. Here's Texture Packer. Texture Packer is a paid-for service or a program that you can grab, right? The great thing about Texture Packer is you can create a sprite sheet by dragging and dropping your different sprites together into one page. And then from there, what you can do is you can split it off here in Unity, and with a special plugin called Texture Packer Importer that you can grab from the asset store, it'll split up everything for you automatically, as opposed to you having to slice it by hand, right? So we sliced it by hand. Texture Packer does it all for you, and it's nice, especially if you want to drag and drop stuff. No, I don't want to install anything new. I said, don't install. So, but let's talk about this a little bit. So I've kind of created this little platform, and like I mentioned last time, if I look at the crate item, let's look at its components, because there's a sprite renderer. The sprite renderer itself is the image. It kind of renders the image for the crate. Okay, so it looks like just like this box or whatever, right? So that's one piece. Then the other components are rigid body 2D, and there's a couple things we did here. One is the mass. Mass is 1. You can make an item more massive. In real life, if I have an item that's more massive than another, for example, I have a skyscraper, right? Is it more massive than I am? Yes. I'm not talking about big. Big and massive doesn't have to be that way. For example, I could have a neutron star, right? You know, as an example, or some crazy, like, you know, heavy-duty star or metal, right? And it's going to be hugely massive, but it might be very, very small, right? Like a star could be the size of my fingernail, right? So if that's true in physics, right? But it's super massive. It'll bend space around itself, right? So mass has nothing to do with size. Mass has to do with substance, right? And density. So the more dense an item is. So if I increase my density, in effect, I'm increasing my mass, right? And this is what we're doing here. When you increase your mass in a rigid body 2D object, think about it as a very heavy metal. Not just and if it was lighter, if I reduce my mass, I have a much lighter metal, or much lighter objects. Lighter objects get affected by things like air resistance. So if you drop a light object, like for example a feather, because it's also light, a lot of times, even though it's light, and the shape also makes a difference too in real life, right? If the shape of an object is flatter and if it's lighter, like less dense, it's going to, or less massive, it's going to be affected less by gravity because of the shape of the object. But it doesn't matter what you have. Both objects can be different masses. One object in physics can be really massive, like heavy, and another object can be a little lighter. As long as they're shaped about the same and you drop them from the same height, they'll fall at the same speed. All right? That's how it is in physics. They fall at the same speed. So mass doesn't really make a difference. Mass makes a difference, however, when you're pushing another object. If I push an object that's super massive, probably not going to push it out of the way, right? If I push an object that's super light, I'm going to toss it out of the way. It's going to fly, right, when I push it if it's really light. So that's when it happens. So if I make this mass heavy, right, heavier than 1, chances are I won't be able to move it around. If I make it 1, I can probably make it so that it's, I can move it around and do different things. Okay, just letting you know that's how a rigid body works. So it tries to simulate gravity as much as possible. Now we've increased the gravity scale to 100. It means like typical gravity scale is 9.8 meters per second square, and there's different ways of doing that. And I can go into the game itself and affect all objects globally and say that all objects in my game, in this particular scene, are heavier, or they're affected by gravity at 100 times. If you're in a heavy gravity world, right, as an example, and when everything falls fast. That has a problem because if you did that with every single object, sometimes it affects the way we apply forces to objects, and so that's not the best way of doing things. And why are we having this problem? Because we're trying to do a pixel-perfect platformer, right? Yeah, it's a PPP, pixel-perfect platformer. It's hard to say. Say that 10 times fast. Anyway, so, you know, but if you did an aspect ratio type of platformer where you didn't care about being pixel-perfect, then your gravity scale could be 1, and everything would be okay. And the problem with that one is sometimes you can't control how big objects are. Like for example, we did this 64 by 64 pixel object. We reduced it, that crate, to 64 by 64. Even though our object was very big, it's harder to do that when you have sprites that are the wrong size, right? That are inside of our game. On that though, I have to say that if I was going to compare, if I was going to do some stuff, do I want to modify something in-game, or would I rather modify it outside of the game, like actual assets? And my answer always is going to be outside. You always try and modify assets outside the game as much as possible and then bring them in modified, as opposed to do your modifications inside the game. For two real big reasons. One is cycles. The more I modify a game with code or the editor inside my game, right, the more cycles it's going to take as opposed to having it already being done. There's no calculations. I just import it, right? That's a totally different thing. So that's the way you should do it. Anyways, I have a couple things here, and I want to talk about these things. One of the things I want to do is I want to import my hero. So we want to import my hero. Let's get this hero going, right? So, and where is my hero, right? Well, my hero, here's my hero. I have a bunch of hero sprites here. Take a look, right? Here's my hero sprite. And if I was to look at each of these sprites, let's look at the preview for my hero. So here's my idle, and here's my idle 2, and if you notice, like, he's got a bunch of different states here, my hero, right? So I have these things. I also have this other thing here, which is a hero sprite sheet, right? Here's my hero sprite sheet. So I could use my individual hero sprites individually here, which is kind of a pain in the ass, because I have to make an animation, I have to drag all these sprites onto my scene, which is kind of funny, right? I don't want to kind of do this, right? I have a walk sequence for my hero and everything, right? That I can drag it on. So I have individual sprites I could use, or I could use a sprite sheet. And this is where Texture Packer Importer comes into play, right? Here's Texture Packer, and there's a couple files that I've brought in from Texture Packer as well. One of them is this one, right? And the other one is this one. There's two different files. One is a TPS file. TPS, right, comes from Texture Packer. Let me open this up in Texture Packer, and I'm going to go to the operating system to do this. So if you don't have Texture Packer, you can follow along, just watch. If you do have Texture Packer, then you'll be able to do what I can do, right? So I'm going to go to Unity Projects. Again, you can also download Texture Packer as a trial, right? I think it expires after 10 days, something like that. But and some of the computers in front of you may have it as well, so people have installed it. But again, it'll expire after usage. So let's take a look. So I want to take a look at my project I'm working on, which is COMP305 Winter 2016. I look at the assets, and under my sprites, I have my player, my hero. And underneath that, I have a TPS file, right? So if I double-click the TPS file, it's going to bring up Texture Packer itself. And you notice that each sprite is already placed nicely on a texture sheet, which we normally call a sprite sheet. So this is a sprite sheet that has all these images of my hero. Now notice that there's a couple things that are problems here. If I was going to try and slice up this sprite sheet like this inside Unity, what would be my problem? Can I do by row and column here? No. Why? Because each of my objects are different sizes, right? And you might see a sheet like this, by the way, up on the web. If you go on the web, you might see sheets like this, sheets and sheets of stuff, and they're all aligned differently. So there's a couple of things you can do here. One is you can go into your program and, hand by hand, grab the object and create separate files for it, right? You could do that, and then bring each separate image of your character, whatever, from a sprite sheet you download from the internet. You could do that, and bring them into Unity as an example, one by one, and then you create an animation. Now you have to be very careful. There's a lot of graphics pre-processing for you to do this, right? It takes a little bit of care. You have to go pixel by pixel, make sure that each of the characters are exactly the same size, or else you're going to get some weird growing and shrinking like effects for the character, which you don't want to do. So it'll look funny, right? That's one thing you can do. The other thing is, if you do things with Texture Packer, again, even with here, you'd have to drag and drop. And all I've done is drag and drop all these images one by one into Texture Packer. And what it does is it kind of does two things. Texture Packer actually creates a texture 2D object, right? And what we want to do is export this thing, if you notice, for Unity. They have an export for Unity, and it creates both the meta tags for Unity, right? There's special meta tags that Unity needs to describe the position of the images on this big sheet. So all the sprite sheet is think about it as a texture map, right? I have a bunch of different objects or images on the same sheet, right? And I want to just look at one of the images, if I click on one of these, at a certain X and Y coordinates. So it keeps track of the X and Y coordinates and the size of the image. In this particular case, I'm looking at an image that's 85 by 56, right? And notice it says position is 2, 2. If I click on this one and I hover over it, it says, my image is 84 by 57. So different size image, right? And the position is 89, 2. So it keeps track of this in a meta tag and meta file and points to that particular position inside the sprite sheet, right? And that's how we reference it. Now, you can do this manually if you like, but to me, Texture Packer does it all for you, and you need to use Texture Packer Importer to do that. So where do I get Texture Packer Importer if I was going to use something like this, right? I need to go to the Asset Store. That's where I would go. So I'm going to go to the Asset Store. How do I get to the Asset Store within Unity? It's actually in Unity that you can go and grab the Asset Store. Anyone know? I'm going to ask this question on a test. Window. And if I go to Asset Store, it's built in, right? It'll actually embed a little web page for the Asset Store, right? And it'll give you the basic assets. This is where the Asset Store comes from, right? And you can download some free assets. And by the way, I will have some assets you can that I will include later on, things that I've bought that you can reuse and so on for our purposes. But notice there's a certain cost to some assets, and there's assets that are free. So let's take a look at Texture Packer Importer. So if I go Texture Packer, if I search for that and I press Enter, then it's going to look for Texture Packer. Here's Texture Packer Pro. You can actually scripting Animator, right, as an example. But I want Texture Packer Importer, which is this one down here. Right, so Texture Packer Importer. It looks like this one. Now it looks like there's an update for Texture Packer Importer, which is totally cool. And I'm going to click this update because I've already downloaded my file. So I'm going to click Update. And it's going to download, it's just like me downloading Texture Packer Importer from my assets. And it's going to ask me, when I download an asset from Unity, from the Asset Store, what do I want? Here's where I want you to look very carefully and see the stuff that you need. Do I need examples? No. Please don't download examples for your Texture Packer Importer. That's like completely useless. You're going to bloat your project. You're going to add additional stuff to your project you don't need. So we can get rid of this. All these, right? For examples. And if I close this up, if I collapse this, do I want my README text file? Yeah, that's okay. How about this, the editor? This is the most important piece. Anytime you see editor, whenever I can actually make changes in Unity to the editor itself, like to the actual editor, the one we see here. I can add additional tool sets, functionality, menus, everything to the editor. I can totally customize my interface to make it more for me. Especially if I'm an advanced designer developer, I'm going to modify my editor. And what this Texture Packer Importer plugin does is it modifies the editor. It's going to add an editor folder to my asset structure and you need that. It has to be called editor in order for you to have these scripts that are going to run, these DLLs, that are going to modify my editor. So I'm going to press import. When I do that, it's going to modify my editor, right? And notice that in my codeandweb.com, here's code and web, I have editor, that's in here, right? There it is. And I have my editor assets. If I look at my README, it says the texture packer importer script located in assets codeandweb.com editor extends your Unity editor to read Sprite Atlas data created with texture packer, which I'd have, right? I already have this for you. So I'm going to go to sprites, I'm going to go to hero, and I have this, right? Notice now when I go here, as an example, it says single, multiple, here's sprites, and I just want to show you this. And if you notice, I have texture. I can also choose texture now, right? Texture, normal map, editor, UI, light map, a bunch of other stuff. Here's a question for you. If I was gonna, is this correct? If I modified everything the right way, for example, codeandweb.com is cool. I like this, but shouldn't the editor be on the assets, like right outside the code here? And the answer is pretty much yes. Even if I relaunch my code, I'm just going to show you this because it didn't do what I wanted to do, because it should detect automatically what it is. The other thing to do is re-import. Sometimes you have to re-import your texture so it can detect. For example, my hero, here's my hero sheet. This is the hero sheet, not the individual hero items, but the hero sheet itself. If I right-click, I can click on, if I go and re-import, right? There's a re-import option. If I do that, it's going to re-import everything in, right? And when it does so, right, if texture packer importer is installed correctly, I'm going to close this tab for a second. If it's installed correctly, then when I go back to this texture, it'll show individual textures. Now, it's not installed correctly. I can tell you right away it isn't, because otherwise you'd see individual textures here, right? So let's try a couple things. Let's see if I close my Unity. Sometimes you have to do this too. Quit. And relaunch. That might be the case here. I doubt it, though. I think it's just not in the right place. So if I go to Unity, because it has to be called editor. We're making change to the editor, and chances are it has to be in the editor itself. Here's my stuff. Let me see. So it's not still there. Let's go and take this editor and pull it out into assets, right? So I want to pull it under assets, right? So I want to take this thing and pull it out. There it is under assets now. Codeandweb.com just has a README file, and let's just delete this thing because I don't need it anymore, right? So, but I have it under assets, and usually the editor. Did I delete it completely? He thinks I deleted it completely. Oh, there it is. Can't be under scene. It's got to be in the root. There it is. All right. So now, if I look at sprites, and if I look at hero. And if I look at this hero sprite here, right, again, I should be able to see an extra window up here that says texture packer importer. And if you have a problem with this, by the way, right, when it comes to if it doesn't extend your editor the way you think it's supposed to extend it, there's two possibilities. I've got the wrong version, right, which might happen now because remember it's been a while since I did this last time. And the other reason is that my type is wrong, which it isn't. It's right, Sprite 2D and UI. If I click on texture, that's a totally different thing. That's not going to be what I want, right? Texture is different than sprite. It's a sprite, right? And the other thing is, like I said before, I may have to re-import with the new settings, right? And it says unapplied import settings apply, right? And then it should detect. Now it doesn't detect, which means I'm not working properly. If it was there, like if it was there completely, then my hero itself, right, not my TPS file, but my hero file, would be correct, right? Would be correct. Like it would actually break it out. Like you would see all the different images, and it doesn't do that. So I can look it up. I won't look it up now. I'll fix it another time. But that's the way you would do it. It would import it, and it's a really neat little tool, but it's not working right now. And it might be because of my tool set is expired. I don't want to go there, right? But I will show you how to do it. Actually, if you look at the videos that I did from last semester, it'll show you exactly what I'm saying here, and it works exactly the same way. All right, but not to despair. That's why I have these things here as well, just in case, right? So I want to do a little animation. We want to talk about animations today. If I drag and drop my idle 001, right, this one, if I drag it onto my scene, can I see my idle 001? What's the problem here? Well, like the the sprite itself, its pixels per unit is 100. So I got to do all that change again, right? And this is where Sprite Sheet's really cool, because you do it one time to the Sprite Sheet and it's done everywhere else, right? That's one. So let's undo that. Let's just get rid of this thing right now, and let's go and do all my sprites. So I'm just going to go right down into all these sequences here, highlight them all at once. Notice that I can do multiple sprites at the same time by looking at the inspector here and changing pixels per unit to 1, just like we normally do, and going from bilinear to point. And then I got to apply all my changes. So when I apply my changes, right, now everything but everything is changed. It bothers me that this doesn't work. Okay, I wonder if I just do multiple on this thing, will it actually give me different options? It does not, because it doesn't work, that component. God, that bothers me. I hate when things don't work. But it's okay. Okay, so I got all these sprites, and let me pull the hero in again. Hey, there he is. Right, unapplied import settings, apply. Let's apply these. Did I not apply all the import settings for all of them? I did apply them all. Yes, here's my hero, right? And if you notice right now, it's just this one dude, right, like this. And he's not going to move. If I attach, let's just do what we did last time. I'm going to attach on a component. Let's make it physics 2D. We want him to fall, so we want to add a rigid body 2D. And that's one. And let's make the gravity scale 100 for him too. So we match the gravity scale that we're using, right? There it is. And I also want to add a component, a physics 2D. Now, here's the question. Should I use a box collider for him? We have some issues here, ladies and gentlemen, because if I make a polygon collider, and if he changes shape, which he would if he's animated, right, I'm going to have issues, because my shape is not going to change. I'd have to make individual colliders for each of these objects here, which I don't have, right? Because each of these objects that I'm making here are just sprites. So I will not have a consistent collider for him, right? So there's a couple of options. One is a circle collider. If I go a circle collider, as an example, the circle collider, see how it's right round like this? That might be the best collider for him. Now I can change the radius to tighten it up a little bit more. I could do that, right? Again, that might be one option. Let me just delete this for a second. The other option, if I was going to go into things, so physics 2D, and if I go box collider, I could use box colliders here, right? So let me just zoom in on. Let me zoom in on this player here for a second. So I'm going to zoom right in. So let's just move it so you can see what I'm talking about. Here's the player, right? And if I highlight the collider, you can see that the box collider is a little bit big. Notice that his hair is right here. Do I really care? Doesn't make any sense. So I could do this and scrunch up the collider so it's a little bit more or closer to what he looks like, right? But remember, he will move, he'll stretch. His face is going to come out of the collider over here, right? So that's one option. I could use multiple colliders, right? Remember, it's just components. I don't have to use one collider. But if I do multiple colliders, multiple components, it's better that I cut the character in pieces. So outside of my application, I can cut things like his head, make it a separate component than his body, because his body is kind of like a collider that's almost like rectangular, right? And his head is more circular. So I could use a circular collider for his head, something like that circular, and more of a rectangular collider for his body, right? I'm giving you this example because it's complex, right? And you might have a character that you download from the web, and it'll be like complex like this. The simplest collider to use, of course, would be a box collider, right? Just for laughs, there's other colliders we can use as well. Let's take a look at some other colliders we can use. Add component, physics 2D, and there's also something called an edge collider, right? What about this one? Let's take a look at this one here. So edge collider, hey, look, this is just an edge. So if I edit this, the great thing about this is I can align the edge anywhere I want. For example, I may want a collider on my character's head, right? Because if something falls on his head, like a block like this, I can make him die, right? And I could have a collider for his feet, right? Now the collider is going to move with him, right? I could also have a collider for his face, right? So if he smashes his face in or whatever, but maybe not for his chin. I don't want his chin to collide and hang on the platform, right? That doesn't make any sense. He should fall somehow, right? So I could do that. I could use these extra colliders here, and I could specify these things around. Okay, so I'm showing you that there's different kinds. By the way, with a edge collider, I could modify it like we do the polygon collider to make the edge, one edge, as crafty as I like, and I can keep extending this all the way around. Okay, the edge collider, you pass through it. You can pass through it multiple times. So if I pass through it once, I can go back through it again. The edge, when you pass through it multiple times, it creates an area that you can collide with. It's not a box, it's an edge. So once you pass through it, you've triggered it. They're best for trigger colliders. All right? They're not really great for colliders. Unless you're going to make something like a ramp. A ramp, if you're going to ramp up, an edge collider works great because you're going to collide on that edge. Can't pass through it, but you can collide with it. Right? So there's some real reasons why you want to create a collider like that. All right, let's undo this one. So edge collider. Let's try the polygon collider, and I'm going to show you the difference between this one. So physics 2D, I'm going to go back to polygon collider. Hey, that's not bad, right? Now let's just modify this a little bit because this is a little bit too. It's not good enough for me. I'm just going to kind of move it around a little bit to make them really big so you can see it here on the screen. That should be big enough, right? Now I want to be as tight as I can, especially if I do here. Notice that I might be able to hit my face. If I do this, that means that my face can kind of land on the platform. Like, ooh, right? It can actually land. Now I can make it so that I can add another collider in here, so if it lands on my face, I take damage, right? You can combine colliders to create different effects. And different colliders can have different kinds. Like, for example, if I have a collider and I have a trigger collider, I can have both on one character. I can use the trigger to say, on trigger enter 2D, if I enter that collider, it takes damage, as an example. Especially on the head. I can have a trigger collider that goes on the top of his head, a line, like an edge. So if it hits the edge, the top of his head, right, he dies or whatever. But I want to have this basic collider here, so that way, when the character drops, as an example, he's going to have his feet, he's going to run. So this is about right. I don't care about this hat. That doesn't make any sense. I'm going to kind of slim up his back a little bit, just in case he gets attacked from behind, right? Or if he falls down, right? So his head, that's pretty cool. And I don't care about his hair. That was good that Unity figured that out. That's just extra information there. That's good. And I want to just tighten this up for his face so he's a little bit. Now he's going to run, which means his face is going to be outside of the collision area, right? But that's okay. It's going to be so tight, so close, that you're not going to notice. And I want to kind of tighten up his body here a little bit more, right? So you can see how I can make it as precise as I want as I modify the collider. Notice that his feet, is this right? I'm going to ask you gamers out there. Should I make a space between his actual image for his feet and the collider? Why is that bad? It means he's going to float, right? He's going to float above the platform. He's got to be like touching. His feet got to be like right in there. So let's zoom right in, right? And let's make it so that this collider is as close to the visual collider as possible, like his feet, right? Otherwise, we're going to have a problem with the way it looks. His collider, he'll seem to float. Right, there it is. Right? And you can make this as specific as you like, right? There it is. Now remember, this collider is not going to animate well, right? But I wanted to show you this. All right, so this is an option. It's not a great option, but it's one. The other way I can do it is I can detect things like distance, the distance between my object, like we talked about before, and another object. And if I'm within a distance, I'm colliding, right? Okay, here's the problem. This character, right, that I'm defining here is only a single sprite. So let's try this single sprite first and see what happens. So I've got my collider, I've got my rigid body 2D. Let's play. Let's see what happens to my character. How come? What happened? How come he's not falling? Gravity 0? What the hell? How come it's gravity 0? Oh man, there's gravity 100. Okay, let's try it again. Look. Oh, look! Hey, look how he rocked. Do you see that? Oh, that's not good. That means that if I go back into my scene view for a second and grab, this is live by the way, right? And if I grab this guy here and I drop him, look, he can almost fall. Look, he rocks. Do I want my character to rock? No, that doesn't make any sense, ladies and gentlemen, right? Because if my character rocks, right, or if I put this block on the character's head, let's try this out here, and it's hard to do, but if I take my character, here's my character, see how it displaces the block? But if I take my character And let's take these blocks. I'm gonna add some more crates in here. So I'm gonna add another crate. Right, let's add some more crates. Right, so I have a crate. My crate is a prefab, yeah? So let's say I add another crate in here on his head. Oh, see how he falls, right? So the crate's there and boom, he's there, right? How he's down there like that? That's bad, right? We don't want the character to do that, right? Here, look, the crate's on his back. Whoa, right? Let's add another crate. That crate fell off. I want to create another crate on his. Oh, God. Have another one over here. Oh, yeah, he's done, right? His crate's done. But see how he fell over? Do I ever want my character to fall over like that? No. So I have to fix that. So how do I fix that character? Just testing. Well, notice that on my rigid body 2D, I have these things called constraints. And I could freeze my position, right? So X and Y, or my rotation on the Z, which is what I want. I don't want to rotate him from our plane, the way we see him. I want him to stay in that position. Whatever position I have him in, he's going to stay. He's never going to rotate. So that definitely is something we got to put in when we fix our character. Let's just do that again. Right now you see he doesn't move over. And even if I drop a block on his head, right? So if I go back, right, and I take a crate and drop it on his head, right, he's not going to fall over, right? That's a good thing. That's what I want. So the character itself has to be rooted that way. It has to have this freeze rotation on the Z-axis. By the way, you can do this constraint with code if you want. Anything you see in the inspector, you can do with code. All right? Okay, so that's one. But the character is pretty static, eh? And I want him to be animated. So when I bring the character in, I want him to, breathe a little bit. I want him to sit there and go like he's idle, but I want to see his breathing. How do I do that? Well, let's kill this guy for a second. So I'm going to get rid of this guy. And we'll bring his polygon collider back. So let's delete it. Well, if you notice, the hero, right, has a bunch of these sprites, and they're all called idle. Idle 001, 002, blah, 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 all the way until idle 24. That means there's 24 frames in his animation. I'm going to select them all at once, and drag and drop them into the scene. All right? Let's see what happens when I drag and drop this guy into the scene like this. Now, once I do that, I'm creating an animation, and Unity knows that I'm doing that, right? Now it's asking me, where do I want it? I don't want an animation in the hero folder. I need a new folder called animations, right? Which is where I want to put it, right? I want to put all my animations and all my clips inside the same folder. In fact, all I care about right now is my clips because I want to make my animation custom, right? So let's go back into this folder structure here. Notice that I don't have, in my assets, I don't have an animations folder. And I need to create one, some kind of animations or clips. Let's just call it animations. So new folder, we'll call it animations. So new folder, right? And click create. Here it is. And now I'm going to name this thing my hero idle, right? Because that's what he is. He's the hero idle, right? Underscore idle animation, right? Save. Okay, cool. So we've got our hero idle animation inside animations. Look what it's given me. I've got a hero idle clip. If I play this thing, I can actually see, well, there's no model available to preview, but I could see what this looks like. And I'll show you that in a second. And the other one is my idle 005. It's another option. There's two objects here that I get, a clip and an animation. If I double click animation, I get what looks like this. This is Mecanum. And the only way you can see this animation here, I'm just going to show you this, right, is if you look at the window animation. So if you look at the animator window, right, you have to bring the animator window up, right? The animator window is going to bring up this animation here. That's the only way. It's going to, if you want to see it. Now, it'll normally pop up in a window, but I like to include it here. Notice that there's a difference between animator and animation, right? Animation refers to the clip. Right? Animator refers to a state machine that you can use to indicate how I start my character. For example, when I first start my character, there's different states. One of them is entry. So I first start my character. And there's an arrow that points to hero idle. That means the default animation for my character is the idle animation. Let's check this out. So if I run this thing, you're going to see what he does. Look, he's like, oh. See how he's running like this? He's like kind of breathing, right? Can you see that? Now it's hard because he's kind of going slow, right? See this little animation there? Now he's not falling. Why is he not falling? No collider, no rigid body. I took those away. Let's add them back in. So I'm going to go back to my idle 005. This is my hero. let's rename this thing as my hero. Here's my hero, right? Notice that I have a sprite that's 005, right? This one thing I have. And I also have another new component you've never seen before called the Animator component that has an idle 005 animation sequence, right? That doesn't make any sense. I want to call this hero animator, right? So let's just change that. So rename this thing. So right click, and I want to just rename, right? So I want to kind of click once and click again, and then go hero underscore animator, right? We'll keep it in the same folder for now. Later on, we'll move it. Okay, so here's our hero animator. And here's our hero idle. And here's our hero object, which I created. Notice that my hero animator is now the controller that controls my animation sequence, right? Okay, cool. What I want to do here is I want to add a component. I want to add two more components, just like we normally do with a hero, right? I want to add my rigid body 2D and my collider. If I don't have those two things, it's not going to work, right? Let's add those two things in. So add component, physics 2D, rigid body 2D, and definitely do not put 1 scale. It's got to be 100 like we did before. And I want to freeze my rotation because we learned that that's what we need to do, right? So freeze my rotation on the Z-axis, right? There we go. Here's my animator. I'm going to close this animator up so that we don't have to see it anymore. And my sprite renderer doesn't have to change right now. We'll look at this in a second. Here's my sprite renderer, right? Cool, cool. So I've got my sprite renderer and my hero, right? Here's my hero. And my hero selected, and I need to add one more thing, a collider. So add physics 2D, right? I'm going to add in a polygon collider for him. And what I want to do is I want to edit the collider. So make sure I go to my scene, and here's my collider. It doesn't remember because it's a brand new object that I've created, right? So if I focus in on this object again, I got to do that little changes again, the changes I made before. And I can go in there and basically, especially on his feet, that's really, really important. Make sure that his feet look like he's touching the ground. Even if he's a little bit into the ground, I'm okay with that. But better than being floating above the ground. That just looks really crappy. I'm just showing you again, just like we did it before, what I did. We don't want him to float too much. We don't want him to be too much off the ground, or too, to be, sometimes too much precision is bad too, right? So kind of put it up to here, and we're going to kind of create a few pixels so that way he can be as rounded as we like to make him, right? And we can use some of these, be creative, and just grab these control points here. And these control points are like the magic, eh? Because you can control the collider and add new control points. But the more control points you add, the more complex the collider. And then of course there's more cycles, right? So we kind of put this in there. There we go. And his back. We don't care about his hat because he wouldn't collide with the hat, right? But then we want to maybe collide someone just like this. There we go. And some of his legs. So that's pretty good. That's a pretty good collider. Maybe even a little bit too tight. That's okay. And maybe this little edge here. I don't like this edge there. So, okay, cool. So we got our little guy, and we've done colliding. It's not a trigger collider. Please don't use a trigger collider here. That will not work. And let's press play, and let's see what we get now. So we get play, and there he falls, and he's got his little animation too. Look, he's animating, right? Let's take a look at that really closely. Look what he's doing, and look what the collider does. The collider move? No. The collider does not move, right? And the collider does not move because we haven't specified that it will. But it's so close, like his little idle animation is so good enough, and I don't care, right? I'm okay with this one. You're going to see the big problem when he runs, right? That's where the run animation is bad. Okay, cool. I've got my hero animator, and I've got my hero idle, but I want him to switch animations depending on what I do. Let's get the other animations going. We can't... I don't care about, in this particular case, I want you to ignore, right, the, his colliders and his rigid body 2D, because we have a model. Our hero is the model, but I'm going to access more than one clip, right, in my animator. Let's take a look at this, right? Okay, cool. So I've got my animation clip, and I want to do the same thing. I want to go back to my, my sprite. So here's my hero, right? And notice that I have a jump sequence. Here's my jump sequence. So as we did before, I'm going to just pull this out here. I'm going to drag and drop in another location, not on top of this guy. In another location, let's drag and drop a jump sequence over here. So this is what the jump sequence will look like. Notice that it's asked me where to put it, right? I'm going to do the same trick. I'm going to kind of go up to assets, right? Here's my assets. And inside my animations, I want to create another clip that I want to call hero jump. So hero, don't worry about the extra animator. Hero jump. I'll explain this in a second. Here's my hero jump. Yay, hero jump. Okay, so if I look at my animations, I got two clips, hero idle and hero jump. And I also have a hero animator and a jump 005. Please delete jump 005. You don't need the second animator, and I'll explain this in a second. So you have hero animator and the second animator here, jump 005. You don't need two of them, only one. Trust me. I'll show you in a second. So you only need one. Each animator controls the hero's animations, right? You only need one control point for this, one animator controller. All right, so this is it. Okay, we haven't added in the jump yet, but we will. Let's get rid of this jump object. We don't need it anymore. Let's get rid of that too. All I cared for is just the hero jump clip. Okay, just the clip is what I'm using. I'm making this really quickly with the clip. This is one way of doing it. Okay, one more clip I need. Go back to hero. I'm going to grab the walk animation from walk 001 all the way to walk 015 and drag it onto the scene again, like this. Whoop, there it is. This is my walk animation now. And notice that it goes into the same place now, finally, right? And I want to rename this thing hero_walk and press save. Inside my animations, now I have three clips. I have hero idle, hero jump, and hero walk. And I also have a walk 004 animator. I don't need that one. So I'm going to get rid of it. So I get rid of that. And I don't need him anymore. That's just my walk sequence, right? So I don't need him either. So get rid of it. Okay, cool. I still just have my idle. This is where I'm going to start. And I want to add in some extra sequence, some extra different states, right? Let's go back to my animator. So I'm going to go back to my animator in my animator window with the hero selected, right? Notice that the hero has an animator controller, and the hero animator, which is inside animations, this object has been referenced here in the hero controller object, right? Okay. So if I go to my animator, notice that I only have one clip, hero idle. Let's drag and drop hero jump, hero walk, right? And now these other clips are here inside my hero, right? So I start with idle, right? But there has to be a way, to go from idle to walk, right? I change states. I go from an idle state to go to a walk state, right? By the way, my hero idle isn't really nice yet. I have to fix it. It's really slow, right? And we'll have to talk about my speed. Maybe I want to speed this up a little bit, right? We can modify my speed a little bit. Okay, cool. Let's go to my hero walk. And my hero walk is another clip, right, that I can preview eventually, right? So let's just from the sake of what makes sense. Okay, I want you to think about what makes sense here. Forget about any state. Let's pull this down here somewhere. Okay, so from entry, I go to my hero idle. Okay, I'm just repositioning. By the way, you can reposition this thing any way you like. Okay, to make sense for you. From my hero idle, can I go to a walk? Yeah, if I press a button, I can probably go to a hero walk, right? So let's move this up to hero walk for a second. And let's right-click on this orange tile. Right-click. Look what it says. It says make transition, right? And I can choose, see this arrow? I can choose this. I can connect it to hero walk. Cool. All right. Next question. Can I go from hero idle to hero jump? Is that possible? That makes sense, right? So I'm going to take right-click again on this, make a transition, make another arrow that goes here. Yeah? Now I have like a tripod. Can I go from hero walk to hero jump? I would. I would run, then I walk, and then I jump. I can do that, right? So let's do that transition. So I'll click on this one, right-click, and make a transition to this one, right? Okay. Can I go from hero walk back down to hero idle? Can I stop walking? Yes, so I can do that. Let's do that one. So from hero walk, make a transition back to this one, right? Can I go from hero jump back to hero walk? Probably I could. I jump and then I'm walking again. I could do that. Kind of rare. Most likely I'm going to go into idle, but chances are I can do this. So I can make a transition back. There you go. And I can probably make a transition from jump to idle. So let's do that. So all I'm doing here is I'm declaring all the possibilities here, right? There's going to be some transitions that you can't get to from other ones, right? Like, for example, can I run and fire? Maybe I can't. Maybe I can't do this. Or can I run and aim? Can I do... No, right? But I can probably be idle and aim, right? If I had some kind of gun, right? That makes sense. So you got to think about, does it make sense for the hero to be, or your characters, or even your enemies to be able to do this kind of stuff, right? Okay, cool. The transitions are really important, right? If I click on the actual arrow from hero idle to hero walk, click onto it, notice that on the right, you have an example of what the hero will look like. And if I drag this out a little bit, you see it here in 3D. Don't worry about the 3D view here for a second, okay? Just bear with it, right? And I can use, if notice I can move this plane around so you can see an example. If I click this play button, you're going to see an example of hero idle. Take a look at this. And it runs. So this is the blend that happens. There's a bit of a blend. So it goes from here and then it goes right to walk. Okay, here's the other thing that happens. Hero exit time. See this exit time? That means that I have to finish doing my idle before I do my walk. That doesn't make any sense. That means if I'm like this, I have to finish my whole 24 frames and it won't let me do my walk sequence until I'm done doing this. So I don't want that. I want to unclick this. Please unclick this one. Okay, cool. If I run it now, you can see as soon as I get there, it doesn't matter if I'm finished my frames, I'm going to go there, right? That's one. And let's just stop this thing. Same thing on the way back. Do I want to jump? I'm walking, right? So here's the other way around. I'm walking and then I'm idle. So let's take this. I'm walking and then idle. Do I have to finish my walk sequence before I go idle? And the answer is no. If I stop pressing the button, I stop. I go back to idle right away, right? This is a transition from one state, walk state, or idle state, to the other. Notice how it's actually showing a little bit of animation, right? It's page flipping animation. I have a certain amount of frames, and all I'm doing is flipping the image each frame. Now, here's the question. How fast is it happening? Well, if I click on my hero idle, right, you notice that hero idle has a certain speed, 1, right? And here's hero walk. It also has a speed of 1. If I don't find my hero walk fast enough, I can modify the speed it up, slow it down by changing this number from 1 to 0.5 to 2, whatever I want, right? Let's try this. Let's make it hero walk speed 2, right? Let's see if that makes a difference when I actually do my speed. So I'm going to go from here, from idle to walk, and press play. So idle and then walk. That's a little better, I think. 2 is probably a better speed than it was before. Even my idle, I think my idle is like, he's lumbering. He's kind of going, he's breathing so hard, right? It's like he should kind of do one of these. He should kind of idle a little faster, maybe twice as fast, right? There's 24 frames in this animation too, which is kind of excessive, right? Let's stop. You don't need that many frames. So let's go back to, if I click on hero idle, let's make this 2 and see what happens. Okay, so 2, and let's go back and try this out. So here it is, and now let's see. Now he's really going. He's like this, and then he's going to run right away. And I think that run sequence is a pretty good speed, right? We may want to increase the speed a little bit more when we see it in actual action. Okay, cool. Here's the other thing I can do with this thing. There's something called blend modes, right? And what I can do is I can reduce the time it takes for me to blend from one to the other. And I want to keep these animations tight, right? I don't want to make it so that it's so loose. We'll leave it like this for now, but I can modify these things. There's little control handles here that I can choose to change the size of my animation. And how this is the area here where it's in blue is where it blends. How long it takes to blend from one to the other. Right? And I want this to be lickety-split like this. So I can reduce my blend mode by really shortening the time frame. If I click this little thing and grab it, I can reduce my blend mode a lot more, right? To make it a little bit less animation. I can also grab my control points here and like I can reshape the whole animation itself, but let's not do that right now. Same thing on the way back. On the way back, I want to kind of make this animation like really, little bit tighter, right? Okay, cool. That's the hero walk. Let's try this from hero idle to jump. So let's try that animation out. So again, do I need an exit time? No, I don't. And in fact, let's just take the exit times off all of them because I don't need it on any of them. I don't want exit time to exist on any of these clips. So I don't want to depend on the clip finishing for me to play something else. There might be animations in the future you make that depend on one clip finishing before another clip starts, right? There might be something like that. For example, if it's some kind of gear or some kind of thing that you're making go, it has to finish its loop before it starts something else. Not in this case. This case is a hero, it's an animator, it's a player that we're animating, right? Okay, cool. Let's make the transition tight around these ones. So I'm just going to just tighten up the transition a little bit more. And again, this is just by eye. Okay, same thing with these ones. These transitions are tight. How about these ones? It's a little bit too loose. I'm just going to make them a little bit like half the size, so they're a little bit tighter in terms of how long it takes. Okay, some tight little animations. And if you could test them like this, so he's idle, and then he's jumping. Look, and he's jumping. Woohoo! Hey, he's jumping. Okay, and he's jumping, and it's going to stop when it's done. Right, so that's pretty cool. All right, so that's one thing. So that's what the animator does. The animator controller, this little sign here that we have, and I only have one hero animator right here, is going to control this. But how do I switch from one state to another? I need to have a trigger, something that tells me that I need to move. And we can do that with variables. So up here, notice that I have parameters on the top left. I can decide, right? I can change this parameter, right, to, for example, is walking or is jumping, right, as an example. I can create some parameters up here, right? So let's try this. Notice that I have different options. I can make Booleans, right? So if I'm triggering a walk or whatever it's going to be, I can change the the state. So true or false. That'd be great if there's only two states, like walking and running, or idle and running. That would be great. So it's true, false. If either I'm idle or I'm running. But there's actually 3 states. So is a Boolean a great choice? And the answer is probably not, right? Because I want to have three options, right? I want to be able to check, or I want to test. This is computers, guys. I want to test for 3 different possibilities. Is 3 a great number for Boolean? Boolean is true, false. That's 1, 2, right? Or 0, 1, right? No. So the answer is either going to be float or int. And I think I want to choose int. So let's try this out, and let's call this anim state, right? So anim underscore state, right? So that's what my object's going to be called, anim state. You can also, if you don't like the name, you can rename this thing to anim state together like this, anim state. That's fine too. And let's set it as a default to 0. So what's the 0th state? It's the end idle state, right? Idle state. And the only way I'm going to transition to this one, to the hero jump, is if my anim state is 0, 1, 2. So if it's state 2, then I'm going to jump. If it's state 1, I'm going to walk, and if it's state 0, guess what? I'm going to be idle, right? That's what I'm going to show. So I need to move from one state to the other. It's just a parameter that I'm choosing, right? Let's bring down this preview here for a second. Notice that the conditions, and I'm clicking on this arrow to indicate the condition. Take a look. I can click on each arrow, can have a condition, right? So here it is. If my anim state, let's click this little button here. If my animation state, look, it comes up. Not greater than, it has to be equals, right? If my anim state equals to, now look, I'm checking hero jump, it's got to be 2. My anim state's equal to 2, then I change to hero jump. If my anim state's equal to 1, here's I'm choosing anim state is equal to 1, it's got to be equal to 1, right? Then I go to hero walk, right? Here, if my anim state is equal to 2 again, because I'm going from hero walk to hero jump is 2. I've just named them. 0 for hero idle. This is your convention. You can make it whatever you want. 1 and 2. That's what I'm making it. You could have made it the other way around. You could have said 2 and 1 or 2 and 4. It's up to you how you do it, right? I'm just setting it up so it's 0 for idle, 1, and then 2 for jumping, right? So from hero walk to hero jump, it's got to be a 2. So I'm making the transition as 2. And what about back? From hero jump to hero walk, it's got to be a 1. So I'm setting all this up, right? Equals to 1. So 1, this is 2. Just make sure you check these to make sure there's something here, right? From hero walk to hero idle, it's got to be a 0. Equal to 0. And from hero idle to hero jump, I did it already. From hero jump to hero idle, it's got to be a 0 again, right? Because that's the state, the 0 state. Okay, good. I've defined all my states, and I've defined a parameter that we can test for in the code, right? That's important, right? Once I have my code, I can test for it. And what am I going to test with? Get component animator. Animator is my component. My animator can hold different values. I'm going to test for my anim state, and I'm only test to see if it's 0, 1, or 2. If it's 0, then I'm idle. If it's 1, then I'm going to walk. If it's 2, I'm going to show the jump animation, right? Okay, I've done this piece. We're done with the animator if you follow my instructions. Anyone have questions before we stop? I'm going to kind of take a pause here, right? And then I'm going to go back to it because animation takes a couple steps, right? And I'm doing this all before we even make the hero move, right? Because I got to program it all in because once I start making the hero move, I want to make sure that all the animation sequences work so I can check, okay? This is my way of doing it. You might see it online a little differently, but this is my way of doing it, okay? I'm going to save everything. I'm going to save my project. I'm going to save my scene, right? And I'm going to get out of this animator. Oh, one more thing to check. If I click on my hero, here's my hero, and if I click animation, right? Notice how I don't have an animator clip that this hero is attached to. So here's my hero, and here's my animator. But if I click this, right? So my animator itself, that's cool. If I click the hero idle animation, right? Notice how I have on my hero, here's what I did. I clicked the hero idle animation, then I went back to here to the animator. Notice that my hero idle have different states. Hero idle, hero jump, and hero walk. Those are different items. And you can actually see it here in the animation window. Okay, this is different than the animator window. Animation is for each clip. And you can create clips on your own. So if I go to hero idle for a second, notice that hero idle runs at 12 samples per frame, per sequence. That's not true. My hero idle animation is 24 frames, right? So if I increase this, it's going to, is it going to lengthen or thing? If I go 24, notice how there's more in the same time. In the single second, there's 24 frames. That means it's going to be faster. Now I got to be careful about this because in my hero idle, I've already increased the time in my animator, right? My hero idle to 2. So I got to take that away, please, right? So I can look at it different ways, right? Here's my animator again. Okay, 24 frames. Let's check out my hero jump. How many frames do I have? 1, look at it, you can count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, and I can zoom in here so you can see them, right? Here are my frames, right? And it looks like I have, if I look at my hero sprite, here's my actual hero sprite in my animator. I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I have 12 samples. That's pretty good. That means that it's going to go through that sequence twice. So instead of it doing only 6 frames of animation, I'm going to go in 1 second, I'll see that twice, that whole frame. That's pretty good. I'm happy with that. And again, you can modify these numbers, okay, if you want to. Let's look at hero walk. Hero walk has quite a few, right? So let's look 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. There's 15 frames in this walk cycle, right? 15 frames. I only have 12 samples. That doesn't compute. I got to at least make it 15. So let's make it at least equal or double. There we go, 15 in a little time frame. So that's going to make it walk a little faster. Okay. One more thing and we'll pause. I want you to look at the hero itself. Take a look where it says loop time. Right? See loop time? I don't want this to happen. I want loop time to be off because if loop time is on, it's always going to keep doing the same thing over and over again, whether I press it or not. So let's select all of them, right? And if I select them one at a time, I'm going to just turn loop time off. So loop time, take it off. Hero walk off. So it's only going to do the thing one time, as long as I press the button. We can come back here and fix this later on, but you're going to see that if I turn loop time off, that's probably the right thing to do. If I hover over it, by the way, it tells me what it is. Enable to make the animation plays through and then restarts when the end is reached. That's okay, and that might be okay for our particular item. We may have to go back here and take that loop time off. Right? We're going to figure this out, and if I have to turn it off or on, then we have to adjust this. For now, though, I think we're pretty good. Let's save the project, save the scene, and save the scene, and then we'll come back and we'll try and get this guy to move around.